Thank you, Speaker, and I thank all in the chamber for providing me with leave to be able to make a contribution to this statement made by the Premier, and I acknowledge the Premier in making this statement and recognise the powerful fact that anyone making a statement in this chamber along the lines of what the Premier has just said has made it very, very clear, and hearing the Leader of the Opposition reiterate those comments has made it very, very clear that in this place, in this chamber and in this workplace, that perpetrators of sexual violence, of sexual assault, of those that are engaging in harassment or bullying or intimidation have no place in this Parliament. I want to acknowledge and thank them for making that statement. And I want to acknowledge the fact that as we speak in this chamber, people sitting in this chamber, people in this workplace right now are listening to this as victim survivors of what has been bullying and harassment and assault in this workplace. And I say to all of them that we know and hear you, we realise that you have had these experiences, we acknowledge that you have had these experiences, and we all acknowledge that we must do better to ensure that those experiences stop. I also say to the perpetrators of that sexual violence, of those sexual assaults, of that harassment and bullying, that things are changing and we will call out those changes. And I think it is very, very clear that all of us have a commitment to recognise that we have a collective responsibility to do that. Now, I know I have form on that, which means that people in this place tend to come and tell me their experiences. I could give you details today, but I don't intend to do that. I don't say that lightly. I say that as a warning to people who continue to bully and harass and assault people in this workplace, that people from all sides of politics come to me and share their stories, and I have the power of parliamentary privilege to share names and details. I have used it before in relation to my own party, and so I will have no qualms as to using it for others. If those survivors wish me to share those stories, I will certainly do so. I want to acknowledge Dania, who is here in the chamber today. The most disappointing part to me of Dania's political life is that she's a member of the Liberal Party. But everything else about Dania's politics and her commitment to being a survivor advocate has been so strong. Dania came and approached me back in March and told me about her experiences, March the previous year, and told me about her experiences, and we then approached together the Premier, then Premier Gladys Berejiklian, and spoke in detail to her about that. I share that bit with Dania's permission because I think it's important to recognise that while the information that I had to hand could have been used for my political benefit and could have been used in a very explosive way, I have always held the confidence of that information, because first and foremost we need to always recognise that survivors should be in control of their own stories, and it is not for anyone to weaponise sexual harassment or assault issues for their own benefits. It is also absolutely crucial that we recognise that this needs to be a multi-partisan approach to stamping out the levels of violence and harassment and bullying that happen in this chamber and happen in this workplace. I want to apologise to Dania at how this system failed her, and I want to recognise that she told her story, and as a woman of colour, when the Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, spoke about the Goward Review, sadly did not mention Dania's story or her name. She just mentioned Brittany Higgins, and all power to Brittany Higgins, but we need to recognise that the stories that get highlighted in the media are the stories of the white women who are held up in a position of power, and the marginalisation of women of colour when it comes to issues of harassment and assault are real, and we need to recognise that. We also need to recognise that it's much harder to talk about the problems that occur in our own circle of influence, in our own factions, in our own parties, in our own connections, but it is incumbent on all of us to do that. So I appreciate that this is going to be a challenging process from here on. There are ministerial staff I know that have expressed concerns about realities of the MOPS Act and realities of SO52s in the other place and GIPPers that cause serious concern to being able to share complaints and disclosures. We have to put our brains together to solve those problems. I recognise that in the Broderick review and what will come out, people are so fearful about the political risks and weaponising of their complaints and their sharing of their disclosures that they have felt too nervous to disclose, and we need to look at how we deal with that as a workplace. And the final thing that I want to acknowledge is the fact that people who come into this parliament have a role and responsibility to show leadership, to stamp out sexual violence and harassment and assault across our whole society. And if we can't do it in this very chamber, we have got no hope of doing it across the state. There is so much work to be done, but to the survivors, to Dania, to all of the people that are staffers that I know listen to this and hear it when we talk about it, I say that I am sorry that we do not do better, but I am very, very committed and determined to doing all that I can in my time in this place to make sure that everyone here and everybody across this workplace ensures that is a respectful place to work, that we put an end to sexual violence, sexual harassment and sexual assault in our workplaces. And I thank the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition for making these statements and allowing me to also make a contribution today.